Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the live stream. Like I said, I know it was a little unannounced, but like I said, it's been busy here these past couple weeks, and having to move equipment in and out has made things a little difficult to plan the live streams. We were hopefully going to have some nice ones from the shop, but we had some bad weather moved in, so of course all the nice, expensive electronics have to come straight in. So. Like I said, we've got a lot to talk about here, just kind of as a general, like I said, heads up for what's been going on. Like I said, I've been able to consistently put out a video almost every day, except for the weekends. I've been trying to make this more of a, like I said, a weekday, workday type of thing. And so everything's going pretty good. But I think what's going to end up happening is that I think I'm going to end up interspersing our longer videos with a couple of shorter 5-6 minute stuff, you know, like the shop tips or things of that nature. Shooting a 30-minute video in a day, having it edited and up is going to be something that's simply not going to be sustainable. So I'm going to have to sprinkle it with some stuff that's a little bit easier. Of course, I have taken this to my Patreons, and my Patreons are very happy with everything that's been put out, and they're kind of my bosses. In fact, most people are telling me that, you know, 2 or 3 videos a week is a high amount for most YouTubers, and I understand that. But the thing that I'm pushing for here is, you know, I have set aside doing this particular work as a job. So the more content that I get out there in the shorter amount of time is what pushes it up. And apparently it seems that when you get to the 100,000 subscriber mark, you get your little silver button, and that changes things with the logarithm for you. And so we've been sitting, you know, right at 70,000 for a long time. Now we've gone up 400 subscribers since the first of this month, which is still a very slow pace. But if this thing's really going to take off, I've got to push it to that 100,000 subscriber mark. And so I am going to do everything I can to push that to that point. Right now I am filming, and I have got a backlog started. So at the very least, we're going to make sure that I've got a week or 2 backlog, that I've got videos that I can put out without a problem. And then once I have got a buffer in there, then whatever I produce, I'll go ahead and release, keeping that 2-week backlog. I would like to be in some sort of reasonable position as far as the money coming in by the end of March. January's been good. I would have never thought I'd have made this much ground in a month's time. So things are good there. It's been a lot of figuring stuff out. And again, Patreons have been the ones that have been supporting me in all of this. You know, it was about $1,000 worth of new equipment. So, and to all of you that have purchased books, thank you, thank you, thank you. That has been a great help. It has been the side sales with books and even the donations from the live streams that have made a huge difference. We're still nowhere anywhere close to a living, but it's taking a lot of the sting out of me having to go into savings. And again, we are go for doing this for 1 more month. However, I hope to have a backlog of videos, because inevitably there's going to be new work that comes into the shop, and I have gotten a phone call from the film industry, and there may be an opportunity for me to do some work on some very interesting projects being filmed here in Georgia. And of course, that is something that we always immediately do. The money is very good, and it's very, very cool stuff. So I'm going to have to try to strike a balance between that, because that will be money that will fund the continuation of the filming. And if I can reasonably keep a couple videos up a week, that'll be a good deal. So, but in the meantime, we are going to make it cover as much ground as humanly possible when it comes to the filming. And again, if you have the opportunity to get a book, make a donation, or to help out on Patreon, bless you. There's no better time to do it. So, having said that, I'm thinking that I'm going to try to attempt to make Thursday night our live stream night. That way, whether I'm here in the shop or I'm actually or out there in the shop or actually here on the inside, we can have a little bit of we can have a little bit of time between the two. The biggest issue right now is the fact that all this setup is actually in the living room, and I'm using the same equipment for the living room that I am for the shop. So getting everything back and forth between the two is a real pain in the butt, and that detracts from being able to film stuff easily. It's going to be one of those situations where I'm going to have to work something out. I'm thinking about taking one of the rooms in the front of the house and actually doing it into an office that has a nice background that I can actually use my camera, my DSLR, to be my webcam and have that set up for this type of live interaction. And then we can be in the shop when we need to be. So that's the deal. Oh, where can I get a book? You get a book from TrentonTie.com. That's where you can get all the books. It's TrentonTie.com. Very good. There should be a donate link somewhere in the description of this video. If there's not, well, then I screwed up and I'll have to figure it out next time. So anyway, all right. Let's see. Getting on to the topic this evening so we can get on to our Q&A. Starting off with, we're going to very shortly going to be getting into tong making. I don't think that there's anything that's been requested more than knowing how to make tongs. And there are so many different ways to approach tong making, it's not even funny. I kind of realized this when we did the rivet header over the past couple of weeks. I did the traditional style, and it just was a pain in the ass. And I don't think anybody attempted to make that damn rivet header. And then, of course, I did it the modern way, and everybody can see just how much easier it is. Tongs, there's just not an easy way to make tongs. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of aggravation. And, everybody starts off with flat jaw tongs, which flat jaw tongs kind of suck. Now, I don't think I put out that shop tip yet. Hang on, let me check. Let me see. I put so many videos up here the past week or so. I have no idea. Let's see. YouTube Studio. What's out? What have I put out? Come on, you joker. Anyway, I'll have a video coming out if I haven't already gotten it out in reference to what the first tong should be. Yep. That'll be the next video coming out. Will be what's my first pair of tongs. And I'm going to spoil that a little bit for everybody that is here in the chat. And so I'm going to give you the high points of that video. Is basically, so many people say, and you guys have heard this before, I'm just starting out. What tools do I need? And I've said time and time again that is the wrong question to ask, because if you say, I want to do blacksmithing, what tools do I need? I really can't help you. I can give you some basics, but they're not really going to help you at all. You'll need a hammer, you'll need a fire, you'll need an anvil, but, tongs, forget about it. If you're going to be working with 3/8 inch square stock, well, guess what? You need some tongs that fit 3/8 inch stock. And the way that I don't think I've ever seen it presented like this. If you went into an auto body store, an auto shop somewhere, and you said, hey, I'm working on a car and I've got a nut on the car, I need a wrench. They're not just going to hand you a wrench and walk you out the door. They're going to ask you, what size is the nut? You say, well, I don't know. And then the person is supposed to do what? Because you need to know what size nut you need off to get the right wrench. If you have a 9mm nut, an 18mm wrench ain't going to do you a whole lot of good. It's the same thing with tongs. You need to think of that analogy the same way with tongs. If you have a certain size stock or steel, you need to have tongs that are specially fit for that. In the rivet header video, when I was working on it, you got to see that even somebody that's got 20 years of experience, if I didn't have tongs that were exactly fit to what I needed, it was a pain in the butt. I had to, grab stuff, hang on to it, wear my arm out, drop crap. It was aggravating because I didn't have the right tongs. So as you're getting started, and I saw a comment right before things were going out. I believe that was from one of our European amigos, Mags, yes. Mags actually asked about, what tongs do you need to start making your tongs? And that is a really good question. And the answer is, well, what size material are you going to make tongs out of? And that was actually the meat of the topic I wanted to talk about tonight. Because I will never forget when I started working with Jay in Andersonville, Jay had several different ways he made his tongs. Now, Jay was not a lifelong blacksmith. He actually went to a fabrication program on the GI Bill. So he understood fabrication with stick welders and oxyacetylene torches. So a lot of the times when he made his tongs, he would actually cut them out, use oxyacetylene torch, and kind of twist them into shape. It was all fabricated stuff. Jay never made tongs from scratch. And I will never forget that the first time, I think it was Mark Asbury, when he was demonstrating making tongs, he didn't just have a long piece of stock and he just started making a tong. No. He actually weighed the material. And folks, let me tell you, when you start making things in blacksmithing, and what you do is you weigh the material so you know how much mass you have, and that's how you start, you know your crap, buddy. I was just amazed, because it never dawned on me that, hey, that each tong is going to have X amount of material and you can weigh it. And so he didn't pick the tong material according to the size of it, or the shape of it. He selected it due to the weight of it, the mass of it. And that was just, but it's not a bad way to do it. It just depends on how much work you want to do. If you have a power hammer or a bunch of guys with sledgehammers, you can get a chunk of steel and make it into whatever you want, but it's going to be a lot of work. As a beginner, you're probably going to want to try to get steel that is very close to the sizes that you're going to be working with. So, and here's another problem. For the most part, if you were about to make your first tongs, I would tell you to work with 1/2-inch round steel. But to make the jaws correctly, you have to fold the end of that rod back onto itself to give you some more meat in a forge weld. Well, if you don't have a cold forge, you are not going to be forge welding mild steel anytime soon. You can try it in a gas forge, but if you don't have a gas forge that's at least a double burner and tuned absolutely correctly, you're not going to get heats that are suitable for welding mild steel. Now, for most of you out there, that's going to sound funny, because you're going to see it says, well, it will forge weld. They're kind of lying, because forge welding high carbon steel requires a lower temperature than medium or mild carbon steel, which means that you can use a knife steel and it will forge weld in there. But a mild steel, you're really going to have a super problem. So there's just so many different factors when somebody asks me one of these questions, because I don't know your particular situation, and there's not one size that fits all. So we're going to assume that you have a solid fuel forge in this next series. I'm going to try to come up with some stuff for gas forges, because if you don't have the solid fuel forge, you're going to have to use bigger stock to draw down from. When I'm doing my tongs, I normally use 1-inch by 1/2-inch flat bar, which is a lot of material. I use it in the gas forge, and I actually draw down things because I have a giant power hammer. Now, if I were doing it by hand, my God, I'm going to be sitting there beating on that thing all day. And it's going to be a problem. So I'm going to try to steer through a lot of that nuance as we go. But in general, if you want to know what tongs that you need to start with, it's not a bad idea to think about, well, how many pairs of tongs am I going to make? For most people, they're going to make a pair, or they're going to attempt to make a pair, and since this is a hobby, that's as far as they're going to go. But if you are getting started and you're going to be making tongs and other tooling, I would suggest a pair of hollow bit tongs that are sized for 1/2-inch. That way they'll hold 1/2-inch square, and they'll also hold 1/2-inch round. Handy tongs to have. But again, it depends on what you're going to be doing. And a lot of times, sometimes tongs are the answer. Sometimes vice grips are the answer. It's one of the reasons it's so difficult to give a satisfactory answer into a forum, because everybody has a different situation. And of course, there's always somebody that can't wait to tell you that your answer is crap because they don't have any money, or they're missing 2 legs and half an arm and it won't work for them. It's ridiculous. But that is the deal. So what tongs do you need to start with? Well, one, what size stock are you planning to work with? What are you making most of your stuff out of? And here's the other thing, I'll throw this in as well. This is another reason that we encourage beginners to go buy their steel. If you've ever seen somebody that's gone to the junkyard or has been digging through some crap rebar, they've got a little bit of everything and they can't hold on to any of it. If you go buy your steel, you know what size you're going to use. And there's nobody that wanted to get started in blacksmithing that went out and found the appropriate size steel. They're just all picking up garbage, and it's a bad deal. It's a bad deal. So that is the lecture there. We're moving at a pretty good clip. We're only 25 minutes in. So let's go ahead and open the floor for questions. If you guys are new, I see some new names in here. If you're unaware of how this works, we open the floor for questions. If you have a question about this topic, any topic at all, any of the previous videos that's come out, just pop them up there, and I'm going to work my way through them. And we usually end up spending quite a bit of time on the questions. I'm going to try to limit us to an hour this evening so everybody can go get their stuff done and I can get some sleep tonight. So good. So I've got a nice big monitor here so I can see what's been going on in the chat. It looks like everybody was here before I was. Some new names in here: William Money Fishing, Jason Polifsine, Bosius Maximus, that's new. SM Rhett Pekka, that's a terrible name. Good evening, everybody from Germany. Like I said, love the German efficiency. Like I said, my favorite terms are German. Panzerabwehrkanone, est mein Panzerabwehrkanone. You know what I mean? Mags is back. Good to see him. Matt Wyeth, Mark Spice, one of our Patreons. Ulbeck. And who we got going? Steve Nolan is here. The Reverend Hull, Reverend S. Hull, Brian Neely, Bobby McDonald, Lauren Wimberly. Now, guys, if you do not know Lauren has been around Purgatory Ironworks for a very long time. In fact, one of the original members of the Purgatory Ironworks website way back in the day. Octavius, another familiar face. Bill Wool is here. Mark Spice, again, another one of our patrons. Brian Neely. Dado Licent, haven't seen Dado here before, I don't think so. Kenneth Johnson, She Who Smuggles Balloons is here. Provo is here, dragging in the money bags. Carnage, Paul Fontanini, all the way from somewhere on the internet. Rogue Sparky, hadn't seen you here before, Rogue. Welcome in. All right, let's see. Let's get on down. Thomas Urso, haven't seen Mr. Thomas here. All right. Poor woman, disabilities. All right. John Hinkle. More Germans. Kilpatrick Mongrift. Great. Excellent. My ring's currently made by Channel Lock. That's good. All right. First question here. What's the best type of tong to start with for making tongs? Again, as previously mentioned, I would suggest a pair of 1/2-inch hollow bits. That will be good for not only 1/2-inch square stock, which you use to make a lot of tent pegs, a lot of your good selling things for your different festivals, like lantern holders, all that kind of good stuff. And also 1/2-inch round is a good place to start with when you're making your tongs. Okay. I see talk of trading in a wife. I'm not sure if that's allowed. Let's see. Oh, I gotta tell you guys this real quick. We gotta take a quick break. Again, there's a notorious other blacksmithing channel that, like I said, that often the thumbnails and much of the video there's not only metal in there, but also two voluminous objects that seem to attract lots of young men. And I actually contacted a modeling service in a local town, and I thought about having a couple clickbait videos with some photographs of a much more attractive person than me. Like I said, that may be a thing, so I'll let you guys know. It's like you got to fight fire with fire, right? David Solo, did I cut the corners off the apron yet. No. He apparently has a OCD issue with the little curls on my apron. Okay. Who's got the flux of Summon Roy? Provo, I have a crystal ball type question. Well, I have a crystal balls type answer. All right. Jeff Moorefield. Now, I gotta do this. So Jeff Moorefield is actually, if this is the correct Jeff Moorefield, is somebody that actually predates me in Andersonville. Hang on, you guys gotta see this. You guys gotta see this. I'm gonna expose Jeff to the internet. He was kind enough. He had some photographs. If you guys can see that, get the glare off of it. That is Jeff Moorefield and Jay Riekert in Andersonville in the 1970s. Now, Jeff, you can't identify him from this photograph because he's a lot older than now. But this was a fantastic present that Jeff brought me. So yeah, he predated me by quite a number of years back in the day, but I had to show that off. Green Bastard is here. Oh, that's a hell of a name. Jerry Smith from upstate New York. Nidavellier, Forge and Woodcraft is here. Southwest of Australia. Ronald Kirby's in late. Provo Pirate. I had some 1045 crack in a quench, and for the life of me, I can't figure out why. Any thoughts on what could cause that? Provo, there's a couple of things. There's a couple of things that it could be. 1045 does have an appropriate heat treatment. Normally, it's pretty good about. Well, I guess here's a better question. Are you talking about the actual hardening or the tempering? So are you dropping it in oil or water? Are you following the book when it comes to the hardening and tempering process? Give me a little bit more information. Ash Williams, hi, you're doing the 1080 stream, looking sharp. Again, if you guys haven't noticed, there is a significantly better quality to the stream. We've been playing with some settings. Ash there works with Big Donson Productions and has been helping me get this thing set up. So the higher quality that you're seeing is actually due to his efforts. So everybody is going to have to thank Ash. I got three, Dan the Undead Man, I got 3 tongs from my local flea market. I had one flat one that got welded side curve to help me forge 1.5-inch bar stock. Haven't had orange steel fly out me towards me since. Yep, the right tongs for the right application are great. M&M is here, and regular here on the live streams. Bill Wool, temperature below 15 Fahrenheit got my tongs on hold. No idea why I moved to South Dakota from Florida. Boy, that's a real one-way move, isn't it? Good God Almighty. We can send you I need to do a video so you can make yourself a spatula to get your butt off the seat in the morning, because I'm sure it's froze to it. Bill Troop from Scotland. Octavius, excellent question. Can I use a bolt for a rivet? And the answer is absolutely yes. In the absence of making your own rivet, you certainly can use a bolt. Nothing wrong with it. In fact, if you'll actually get bolts that are a good bit longer, that don't have the thread all the way up the shank, it's the best way to go. You can get them for 75 cents for even a big one, and it'll save you a lot of time and a lot of aggravation. And if you get real spiffy, you can even get the washer and put the washer over it and rivet it over the washer, and it gives you a little bit of extra play in there. So absolutely, if you are in a pinch and cannot make your own rivet, you can use a bolt. Good question. Rogue Sparky, instead of forge welding the 1/2-inch round, can you upset to get the mass needed to make the tongs? Excellent question. And the answer is yes, but you're going to find that trying to upset 1/2-inch bar is a lot more of a pain in the butt than you'd expect. It is so much easier and so much more controllable to be able to actually fold it over and weld it. And they call that an English cigarette weld. It can be upset, but you're going to find yourself doing a tremendous amount of work to try to get that to do right. I've done it before. It's not something I'd recommend at all. Okay. Let's see. Jeff Moorefield, that was a long time ago when I had hair. Expose him, please. There are ladies present. Well, I think Jeff's been exposed more than once. It's not going to be a first for him. Dennis Campbell is here. All right, Andre Grenier Jr. is here. Can't have too many tongs. I made a few and bought a stack. Yeah, that's one of the things that you're going to end up doing. You know, when we were in Andersonville, Jay had a huge collection of antique tongs. Now, here's the other thing. You go to old flea market and you find old tongs. These things are antique. Some of them probably 100 years old. And sometimes I kind of cringe because you have a tool that's got all these, I mean, almost archaeologically significant wear marks on them, and somebody wants to kind of redo them. Now, you know, sure, they were cheap, but do you really want to destroy a 100-year-old relic just so you have some tongs when you can go buy a pair of vice grips? There's a whole argument there to be made, and I've seen some very beautiful tongs, some very rare tongs, just kind of thrown into a fire, bent and beat up by somebody who didn't know what the hell they were doing. So in the process of having a pair of tongs that worked like crap, they destroyed a $400 or $500 priceless antique. Excuse me, that didn't make a lot of sense. A $400 or $500 antique that in my eyes is priceless. How about that? That makes a little bit more sense. Bill will put a heater on that spatula. Acres Forge. Oh, Jake is here. I don't have a picture of Jake. Jake is another one that was with me there in Andersonville. Provo, hardening. Right when I dunked it in the warmish water, it went ping. Okay. Provo, that's most likely your issue right there when you did the hardening, because in 1045, hardens in oil. It tempers in water, so most likely it went ping because you dropped it in water. 1045, you can, if you've preheated the water, sometimes you can get away with it, but most of the time it's going to go ping. So there's your deal. And also, if you will pull, there is a spec sheet that will tell you what the industry standard is for hardening 1045. In fact, that's all steels. All of you make note of this. If you're hardening a steel, period, there is a literal recipe that is accepted by the industry standards. And you can find this with a quick Google search. So, get a book, do a little bit of research, stay off the forums. If you're going to find a recipe for hardening and tempering, stay off the forums. There's a couple people that get it right, but there are so many people who don't. There's a lot of bad information. Go to a book, go to a source, go to an industrial source, and get the right formula. Is there a preferable length of range for your tongs? Not especially. It really depends on what you're doing with it. The more length on your tong, the more leverage that you have, but the less flexibility you have in moving it. There is a length that'll get in the way. A lot of my tongs have a longer range, usually about 18 inches, somewhere along in there. I think that's kind of a standard deal. But if I have smaller tongs, they're for smaller stock. Sometimes they're only 12 or 14 inches. It really depends on what I'm working on. In general, the length of the range scales with the largeness of the work. So, when they had power hammer tools and they were working with 2-inch steel, sometimes they would have range that were a good 3 feet. That would give you the proper leverage, because trying to hang on to a 3-inch square bar requires some beef. I love the U.S. perspective that 100-year-old items are antiques. Mark, that is a thing. You've got to understand that literally when we find something that's 100 years old, that's a big deal for us, because we only have, really 200 years of history or thereabouts. anything before that's prehistoric. I mean, and none of our stuff is saved. Most of our homes are built out of wood. So the towns that were coming up just went to dust. In England, you have houses made of stone. Even France, I think in France that there's a requirement that if you build a house, it has to stand for 300 years. There's like literally requirements that it stand for 300 years. Here in the U.S., that's not the case. And so finding anything that has managed to survive even 100 years is a big deal. But that is, in fact, a truism. Absolutely. We find something from 1860 and we lose our minds. I have tried to make some tongs and I had to quench them because I ran out of time. They are mild steel, so can I reheat them and still forge okay? Absolutely. That's one of the great things about mild steel, and one of the other reasons that you don't want to use a high carbon steel for your tongs. Tongs are going to heat up and they're going to cool. And if you use a high carbon steel, there's a good chance you're going to crack them and they're going to break very easily. So this is a case where mild steel or medium carbon steel like 4140 is a much preferable material than high carbon steel. Went to see a power hammer today. The old guy used to be a blacksmith. A tree fell on it 10 years ago. It's the only one I have seen that will require a chainsaw. That's pretty wild. Animus Reptor. Good evening, folks. Jake says there's a heat treating app. I had no idea. You damn millennials. Actually, no, you're a lot older than that, aren't you, Jake? Provo, then my specs are wrong. It said water quench. Huh. Now, again, this is where let me do a quick search, because all the 1045 that I have done has been in oil. And there's the answer. Here's one coming up. 1045 is a water or oil quench metal. Wow, and there's only a 25-degree difference between the two. See, now again, here it says that, now this is from Speedy Metals, and Speedy Metals is a shop. Let's see, let's go to actual, steelforge.com is an actual industrial group, I believe. Heat treatment, annealing, or hardening. No, it says both of them. Okay. So again, the book is calling for both, but I would. So let me ask you this. I'm about to open my mouth and cause myself a problem. Oh crap! Oh crap! Sorry, guys. My bad. I swapped over here. Okay, that was my bad. I'm sorry. Okay, so here's the deal. It is. Let me ask. So, are you using an electric oven to get your heat with, or are you trying to do it by the fire? Because here's I almost let my mouth run away with me, because I almost said without asking that most likely what it is that the temperature that you quenched at wasn't correct. That's my go-to. So I'm hedging my bets though. So if you have an electric oven and you had it at the correct temperature and it's still cracked, then I'm at a loss. It happens sometimes, but that's even in the directions here. It calls for a 25-degree difference between an oil quench and a water quench. That is a incredibly precise temperature measurement that you simply cannot obtain doing it in a forge fire. So, you got an electric furnace? Okay. I saw in Forged in Fire that a guy's blade broke because of the grain. I thought steel was steel because they could be melted and reformed. It can. So grain, what they're talking about the grain size is that basically, I'm talking off my butt here. When you have an enlarged grain, what means is that he actually had the blade too hot for too long before he quenched it. And what happens is that the actual crystals inside the metal grew to be too large. And when they grow very large, they actually have a tendency to break easier. Normally, when you hear it referred to, they talk about fine grain steel is stronger than coarse grain steel. How about that? There is a heat treat at. How about that? Huh. The reason I say that 1045, I always quench mine in oil, is because I have had cracking with 1095 or 1045 before using a heat treat oven. It has been a crapshoot when it came to water. So again, I don't know what the industry is doing a little bit different. I've never had consistent results trying to water quench 1045. Yeah. Jeff Moore from my ISP sucks. I'm out. Matt Wyeth, I've seen a lot of people making bolt jaw tongs from high carbon steel. Why is that? Matt, I have no idea. Is it still double echoing? Should be fixed. Okay, should be fixed. There we go. Yeah. Sorry about that. Matt, I don't know why people would make high carbon steel tongs. That's a terrible idea. I don't know of any. I don't know of any situation that you would make a high carbon tong out of that would take heat. Wow, that's awesome. Recently visited an old fort from the 1800s and grew up and found my great-great-grandfather's cattle sign carved in the foundation. That's awesome. So Provo, again, in not being there, if you don't have an electric oven, I'm gonna tell you, if you don't have an electric oven and you don't have an infrared thermometer to read it, because see, 1500 is above critical, so it's going to be after it loses its magnetism. So I would tell you, if you're doing it that way, go with an oil quench, canola oil. I don't know if they have canola over there. But canola oil is kind of a go-to here. It's relatively cheap, but I would definitely preheat it and try that. But yeah, and this is the other thing that I always talk about. People don't realize, these heat treat ovens are really that kind of critical. You can hear, somebody says, well, I made a knife one time. It was a good knife. But they're not going to give you any numbers on how good a knife it was because they can't, because they don't know. That's the problem. If anybody says, hey, I made a great knife, how do you judge that? Did they actually test the hardness of it on a hardness tester? Nope. Well, it was sharp. Well, congratulations. I can make the finest piece of Pakistani poo-poo sharp, but that doesn't mean it's going to hold it. So that's where heat treat ovens really come in. Random goat is here. Octavius, I don't have a way to store oil safely. Octavius, any metal barrel will do. The small 5-gallon metal barrels or 5-gallon metal buckets all do the same job. Green Bastard, I've had good luck using railroad spike to make my tongs. Not my first choice, and there's really not enough metal in there to make a really good pair of tongs. For what size you can get out of them, it will work. It's certainly thick enough. It's just not going to let you have anything really beefy. Saint Tuna, hey man, I found your channel not too long ago. Well, welcome to the live stream, and thank you for being here. Random Goat is the only Brazil style hammer tongs that should be spring steel, right? Again, I don't know why they would be spring steel. And I don't know if there is, again, I don't know why they would be spring steel. They're still going to be contacting material that's hot. And if you quench them, that's going to put them at risk for cracking. So I don't know why any pair of tongs that are for hot work would be used in that fashion. Oh, Bosus Maximus, new guy in the stream. Thank you very much, man. Those stream donations go a long way. So thank you very, very much. Like I said, we certainly don't run this thing on love and kisses. Brian Dormany, another regular here. Good evening. Quenching best practices question. Should the quench medium be preheated for use? Brian, in short, the answer is yes. Usually about 120, 130 degrees is usually where I bring mine up to. Believe it or not, a warm quench medium quenches faster than a cold one because the colder, a couple things. One, the oil tends to be more viscous while it's cold, and two, it has to do with how it adheres to the hot metal as it bubbles while it's in the quench. So yes. Dan the Undead Man, I tested a heat treat on my knife. I had to crank a cheater bar back and forth many times before breaking. The grain looked like soft grave velvet. So I'm so happy and so sad to break a well-made knife. Absolutely. There are good ways to test. I'll be making a lot of tongs out of railroad spikes. I have a 55-gallon barrel full of them. Okay. Bill Wool, tried welding mild steel using a magnet for checking the heat, didn't succeed. So okay. There's a lot wrong there, Mr. Bill. The magnet is not used to indicate welding heat. The magnet is used to indicate what we know as the critical temperature or the transformation temperature. That is only used in hardening. That's usually, for most steels, around 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit. The welding temperature of most of those steels is going to start about 2,100 degrees going up to 2,300. So you are literally at half the temperature you needed if you were using a magnet. Yeah, magnet's not going to do you a damn bit of good when it comes to forge welding. Like I said, if you have a book, you need to go back and kind of reread that section because you clearly got some stuff mixed up. Magnet is not going to help you for forge welding. Okay. 410 Forge Blacksmith. For an atmospheric forge, what is the optimum PSI for the gas? I've heard 20 and recently heard 25. So 410, that's a big problem because there's not. There's just not. Because here's the deal. If you have let's say you have a 035 MIG tip and it has 4 PSI over here, that is X amount of gas. However, if you have a nozzle that's 2 inches and it has 4 PSI, that is worlds more gas. So PSI really isn't it really doesn't tell you how much pressure is going in there. There's a couple of other calculations in there. It has to do with the actual tip orifice and some other things. Now, there's usually some other factors in the actual regulators themselves. I'm trying not to stumble on myself here because some regulators measure the back pressure and the PSI that's coming out because there's got to be a standard orifice in the regulator. So there's some variation in there. My forge, the Dante forge that we sell, is a ribbon burner forge, but I would say that the vast majority of forges are going to fall between 5 and 20 PSI, assuming they're all using the same regulators and tip sizes. 25 PSI is dumping some kind of gas into a forge. I would be very wary of 25 PSI. The most I ever run my forge on is 15 on that end of things. So, and it depends on how many burners you got. Saint Tuna, what are your thoughts on a taller vertical quench tank? Tuna, in many cases, they are absolutely necessary. If you're going to end up doing, if you're going to do swords or things like that, you got to have it. There's no reasonable way to have a 6-foot quench tank to be effective. It's just a pain in the butt, gets crap in it, and you're not going to have enough oil. However, you can use the vertical. Problem is you're going to have some fireballs. You're going to have to be very careful about, one, not only catching the fireball to the face, but two, having boiling oil blow up in your face. So there's some safety hazards there, but they are necessary. Noah Neely, my dad told me to join this. I'm glad he did. Well, Noah, thank you for being here, buddy. Cleft weld 2 railroad tongs together, and that's one side of the tongs. Fair enough. Oh, that's Brian's son. Okay, I'm with you now. Random Goat. The reason Brazil style hammer tongs are spring steel. Random, I would challenge you to check and see if they are spring steel. Spring steel usually implies stuff that is 60 points of carbon or more. They may be 4140, but I would highly doubt that they are actual spring steel, which would be 60 to 70 points of carbon. I don't know that, but I would be very suspicious because they're still going to be holding heat, and if you've got 60 to 70 points of carbon in there, that's going to cause breakage. So 4140, I would tell you most likely 4140. Mild steel is usually 1018, which is only 18 points of carbon. It will bend. If you're using power hammer tongs, the vibration will cause the mild steel to bend. It's the reason that we use 4140 in a lot of our heavy duty tongs. If we're doing just light stuff, mild steel is no problem. But if we're doing heavy power hammer tongs, 4140 is what we use. But I seriously doubt that it's actually a spring steel. Unless you want to call 4140 a spring steel, which I don't think that falls into the common usage. Here's another problem that you guys are going to run into is what people mean by words. Because there's a lot of people that when you say spring steel in the industry denotes a very particular range of carbon content. For other people, saying spring steel means it's springy. So whenever you're having a discussion, you have to make sure what terms you're actually using and that everybody's on the same page. So in my particular viewpoint, spring steel usually has more than 60 points of carbon. It's not just springy. Travis, what's your opinion on wolf jaw tongs? Wolf jaw tongs are useful for picking crap up off the floor and out of the forge. They're not super handy for forging with, but they are excellent for manipulating material to get it into another pair of tongs. So again, handy for moving materials and grabbing stuff that you've dropped. It's just not tongs that I would usually forge with. Jake, is it worth turning old horse nippers into tongs? Not really, because the question the discussion we were just having about it being high carbon steel, and nippers, because they're nippers, are a high carbon steel. You're going to have a real bad problem with them wanting to break and crack with exposure to heat and cooling. So I would say no. Datolescent, could you offer advice about using a cold anvil? The temperature in my garage is 40 degrees. What would happen if I put hot metal on it and hit it? It would draw heat out of the piece faster, but it would warm up. You'll notice there'll be a decreased time that you have to work the metal. It will gradually warm up. There's a lot of people that live in colder climates that will actually have a little block of steel that they will put in their forge, let it heat up, and then just set on top of the anvil just to warm it up. Of course, we don't run into that too much down here. And if you're just doing a little bit of forging, it's probably worth it to heat it up. But for somebody like me that starts in the morning, is working on it all day, 15 minutes of work and my anvil will be up to a reasonable temperature. Moses Maximus, you're very welcome. You do great work. Moses, thank you, man. Really do appreciate it. But love and kisses are the first words to spring to mind when you start on one of your corrective rants. They are corrective. That's making sure that good education is getting down the throats of the dumbasses that need it. Goats out of here. All right, where are we at? Daniel, are you going to make more videos on how you would make something in a professional shop? Daniel, I'm wanting to. There is so much to film, man. There's just so much. And again, just like with that rivet header, I felt it was necessary to show everybody the difference between the two. And again, what I'm trying to do is I'm spanning so many people. I've got people that are in their backyard, and I've got people that have a reasonable shop, and I've got some professionals in there. So almost doing 2 videos is really what I need to do for both, so I can kind of cover that whole span of who has what equipment and what you can look forward to if you get better equipment. So if I think that there's a real significant difference in the video of how somebody in the rough would do it versus a professional, then yeah, I like that idea. It lets me cover the bases. Jim Ramsey, question on warmth in the quench oil. What's the best way? Jim, I actually have a piece of 1-inch by 12-inch square bar that I heat up in the forge, and I just drop down in there. And I have an infrared thermometer, and I watch the temperature, and when the temperature gets about where I want it, I pull the bar out. Bill, no book, just trial and error and YouTube vids. So Bill, if you have not been present for many of my Facebook forum discussions, a book is the absolute best thing that you can do. If you are dinking around on forums and YouTube, man, you were doing nothing but costing yourself time and potentially putting yourself at risk. Take $20, buy a book. Like I said, got my book on TrentonTide.com, Laura Lee Sims, Mark Asbury. There's no reason that you should not start with good education. That's got to be the biggest thing that I'm always pushing everybody is, if you don't have my book, there's a particular saying in my book, and it's a situation of where, if you're naked in front of a sliding glass door, you can slam your wiener in the sliding glass door. But it's not really a question of can you, it's should you. And you can start blacksmithing with no good education and no basis, but it's not should you, it's not can you, it's should you. And you should never start any endeavor without leaning on a bit of education. $20 will solve so many of your problems and save you a lot of money as well. So buy a book from somebody. Matt Wyeth, I'm running about 300 kilopascals in my gas forge. And see, and these are better numbers, or BTUs is actually a better number for forges, but just nobody uses them. Kilpatrick, should you warm the oil from the outside or have a sacrificial piece of steel to chuck in first? I have a piece of steel that I chuck in. St. Tuna, do you think my flux core welder is enough to make that rivet header you made earlier? Absolutely. Even if you've got a crappy one, those wells don't have to be that deep. So there you go. Mark Goggin is here, one of my Patreon supporters. Thank you for supporting the work on Patreon, Mr. Mark. Bill Wool, really surprised I had to make flanges for my double chimney and how tightly I got them to fit. Color smaller hole in the sheet and then stretch it to fit to seal between the double walls and one. Yeah. Rock Liquor for Toes, another new face. From your recent nail header video, how would you adjust a nail header for horseshoe nails, or would you need to? Because, well, the only difference that would really be between the nail header we made the last video is the fact that you'd actually probably, if you wanted to simulate the horseshoe nails we have today, they have a elongated head instead of just a flat shelf. It's more of an angle. You would simply take the punch, that square punch we used, and go in from the top. so that you had a recess. And that would be the only difference. Dustin Schulke, how do you feel about using peanut oil for quench? It works. Canola tends to be a little bit lighter, but you shouldn't have any particular issue. It ought to work. Bosius Maximus, while we're on quench tanks, what's your thoughts on vertical sword quench tanks, demagnetizing your sword and getting the curve in a samurai sword by quenching it magnetic north? Oh my God. So Bosius, you are new. Like I said, I have been winding up magnetic north, and let me say this for the record. Everybody else here has ever heard this. Magnetic north is the biggest garbage bullshit that has ever been out there. Now, I say this on live streams. I try not to do it in things, but it is pure and utter bovine bullcrap. In Latin, we call it bovis stercus. It is bullshit, period. That is an incredible myth that has gone around, and only stupid people buy into that. However, the problem is there's stupid people that are super confident about it, and people that just get into it don't know any better, and so they go, "Really? Is that the case?" So again, that is absolute bovis stercus, period. Do not worry about any magnetic fields when it comes to quenching steel. Again, vertical tanks for swords are a must. Like I said, they just didn't have a better alternative. See, the problem with a vertical tank is that it solves the problem of doing one blade. The reason you had long tanks and big shops is because you had more oil. You can only quench so many blades before the oil overheats. So, if you're doing a vertical quench for one blade, works great, no problem. If your blade warps, it's not because of magnetic north. It's normally due to uneven heating. And even the original samurai blades were not straight when they came out of the quench. There was an entire process they went through using a vise. It took about a day or so to actually completely straighten the blade, because even then it was not perfectly straight. Just picked up a pair of 24-inch locking pliers from Harbor Freight. Boy, that's a big pair of locking pliers. Usually they break down coil springs and make the high carbon steel tongs out of that I've seen. Matt, I'm gonna go out on a limb here, and I'm gonna say that those are a bad idea. Now, I think somebody mentioned before that they've got some that are made out of coil springs, and they say they have to specifically be careful not to quench them. It's kind of a problem. The whole idea by having tongs is you can keep them cool so that they don't deform. If you can't quench them, then you can't keep them cool. So again, a sliding glass door issue. Can you do it? Yes. Should you? Probably not. Saint Tuna, what kind of metal do you think a car axle is? Normally, those CV shafts are going to be something along the lines of a 4140, and yes, they make excellent hammers and also drifts and punches. We make almost all of our stuff out of drifts and punches, and there's a couple of we usually use forklift tines, which are big blocks of it, but I've got several tools out there that are made out of CV axles. Andre Grenier, thank you for all the help you gave me so far. You were very welcome. Brent Legg is here. Jim Ramsey. Brian Punton, my first exposure to you was a crazy man in a leather top hat. I've been hooked ever since. That was a heck of a deal. I hated they made me wear that on national TV, but what do you do? That's Hollywood. Mark Spice, it must be the longest time it's taken Trent to mention the sliding glass door. It's a common refrain. Mark Grogan, where you find Mark A's book for $20? You don't. Like I said, Mark Asbury's books are about $60 a pop, if I'm not mistaken, but they're super nice, hardcover. But again, there are better options out there to get you started. Some of them only $20 plus your shipping. All right. DF in the shop started my trek from stocking up tooling. Yep. He's got a good channel. Rock Liquor, well, the thing is this is the first time I've seen you in live chat, though, isn't it? Like I said, I have not seen your name there. And unless you bought the book with Rock Liquor for Toes. 410 Forge Blacksmith, I received your book last weekend. Pretty thorough and funny so far. It's cool seeing and learning about Jay. Appreciate that, man. Like I said, I wanted that book to be mine. Jay had a book. I've been considering reprinting it. But that's going to bring its own issues. But yeah, I'm glad everybody's enjoyed it. Dustin Schulke, you said my last name correct, and thank you. You're welcome, sir. I'm usually pretty good at the pronunciations. Stone in the Field 1, another new face here. What are your thoughts on rounding hammers? I think rounding hammers were a magnificent way for Brian Brazil to make money. Again, Brian Brazil is legendary in the craft, very well known, and that one video he did about a rounding hammer just took off. And there are some applications where a rounding hammer might be a little bit better. I'm not a big fan of a rounding hammer. And every other professional that was out there before Brian Brazil made that video, not a big fan of rounding hammers. But everybody that watched that video has to have a rounding hammer. And so Brian Brazil has made himself a lot of money. I'm not going to say it's a gimmick. It's not. I mean, because rounding hammers were a thing. They have a very limited scope of application. But I think they're kind of like the samurai sword in the fact of how many people say they're so great. And they're not bad. It's a hammer. But it's just not, it's not what they're made out to be. I don't have a rounding hammer. I don't use a rounding hammer. But I sell the hell out of some rounding hammers. Oh. Peter C. Hey, Trent, what refractory or rigidizer do you recommend for a propane forge? So here's the thing. One of the reasons that I don't use refractory or K-wool anymore is because it's a health hazard. It kind of terrifies me that everybody on the forums is buying this stuff and they're being asked to rigidize it themselves. Silicosis of the lungs is a big thing with these things. It doesn't last very long. It tears up. It causes a hell of a problem. That's why every forge that we have now is either made out of fire brick or castable refractory. KO wool is going to be KO wool. It's going to be shredded toilet and it's getting in your lungs. I don't care. And here's the thing. You can put rigidizer on it, but the moment that you grab the side of it and tear it, you're getting fibers. It's just not a good thing. Not a good thing. Like I said, there are several spray-on rigidizers that I think do a little bit better job. ITC 1000 is the stuff where it kind of helps the heat. The rigidizer is a different deal. I don't even know a brand because I don't use any of it anymore. Bosius Maxis, I figured as much, but I wanted to hear it from a pro. That would mean if you didn't quench it magnet north, it would warp in different directions. And I've been... I think I'm going to end up doing a video on this, and we're going to do a little bit of scientific stuff. I'm going to quench blades at different things, and of course, I'm going to have some screwery in there. Because if you take a torch and you heat one side of a knife blade, and even though the blade glows red, if you quench it, it will actually warp towards the heat. So I think I'm going to have one of those videos that makes people angry, but that's on the list. That's on the list. Just finished my set of quick tongs. Very easy for new smiths. Absolutely. Alan Spirit, do you use sucker rod for tools? So, Alan, that's one thing that we don't have here in Georgia is sucker rod. Apparently, it is a big thing elsewhere in the country. And it is apparently somewhere on the lines of a medium carbon steel. And from everybody that I've spoken to, it seems to be a good steel for basic tooling. Jake, I still have Jay's book. It's a fantastic volume of knowledge. It is. I go back and reread it often. Mark Blofser, our visual TV accoutrement in charge of acquisitions. Guys, if you were at the live stream the other night, Mr. Mark Blofser is the reason that we have our new big screen that I can actually read the chat while I'm out in the shop. So all of us owe Mr. Mark a big debt of gratitude for helping out with the big screen and the stand for the big screen. So Mr. Mark, thank you very much. Got old truck axles, coil springs, leaf springs, sucker rod, and what's labeled as weldable steel. I'm assuming it's mild. You know, high carbon steel is weldable, so you have to be very careful about, again, those definitions. They can mean a lot of different things. What is your opinion on online classes? I really enjoy Alex Steele's online classes. Cheap, easy, and helped me get my first forge made. That's something that's been coming up, but there are some classes that I know Mr. Steele and a couple of others, and they charge exorbitant amounts for. And, you know, as a performer and an educator, I don't know how I feel about having a pre-recorded class that I have to charge people for. You know, if I'm going to pre-record it, it's something I probably need to let loose on the internet because I've done this work because I've enjoyed it, not that I was making a business out of it. So for me, the jury's still kind of out. If I'm going to do an online class, it's going to be live and it's going to be worth the money. But there's a couple of the classes that they have put forth that are $350 for a pre-recorded class. And again, this is just the way that I feel about it. If I charge somebody $350 for a pre-recorded class, there needs to be several people that immediately needed to come down to Georgia and punch me square in the testicles. That's just my feeling on that end of it. Again, maybe I have more educator in me than a businessman, and I'm okay with that. All right. Shag Nasty is here. Peter C. Thanks, brother. Anyone in the market for propane forge, a.k.a. poison box? You know, again, there's a lot of people using them, and if you have the proper ventilation and all that kind of good stuff, it's okay. But they are one useful thing that came to the forums the other day was actually an X-ray of a guy's chest that had started using a forge and been using it for about 8 months in an enclosed area and silicosis in the lungs, and that's you're breathing shredded toilet, and it's not good. So. Lana Blade Show, June 4th. Thank you again, dude. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. All right. Jake, be good, man. God, you're not old enough to have children. That's terrible. Taekwondo Road, not trying to stir up trouble. In your Play-Doh video, how to move metal, you use a rounding hammer and call it by name. So that was very specifically Jay's hammer, and that technically it is a rounding hammer because the face of it is so rounded, but we actually use that for texturing. So, and again, we get down to definitions. When you talk about a Brian Brazil rounding hammer, you're usually talking about a 2-pound hammer with a very wide face. Yeah, it was a rounding hammer, and I was using that term very deliberately. But I would actually call that my texturing hammer, though it is technically a small rounding hammer. So again, you're just getting into definitions there. No reason to duck. No reason to duck. Okay. Videos that upset 20% of people make it go viral. I have a video on my Facebook pouring aluminum into a termite mound with 28 million views. 80% of people liked it. Absolutely. Charles May, thanks for clearing up the hot and cold rolled steel confusion. Fantastic. Mark's out of here. Juan Garza, happy you're back doing videos. Thank you, sir. Jay Plant, hey Trent, love your dedication. Do you have a good book for steel heat treatment in general? Does your book touch on that? JP, it brushes that. That's a whole other book. And the book that you want, and it requires some understanding. These books are typically not cheap, especially now. But one of the gold standard is the Practical Heat Treating by the American Society for Metals. This is the gold standard. It has phase diagrams in here. You have to educate yourself a little bit to be able to read these, but there's really not anything that you could possibly know in here. It's not a book for beginners on that end of it. It's, again, you've got to know a little something to be able to read this properly. But it is something that this is the industry standard. So the problem is that because of Forged and Fire and things like that, these books now often go for $100 or better. So you're going to have to you may have to just do a little bit of extra research and find some reasonable resources before you jump off into something that expensive. Could, but my wrists are gone. Bozius, Atlanta Blade Show. Every one of us wants to be done with this damn plague. I have not done a show. In fact, I was supposed to be at a show next week down in Florida. That they're so good to me down there, but because of some personal issues and the plague, I can't risk going. I'm hoping that vaccines get in a lot of arms. I would love to get my butt out of South Georgia and go up to the Blade Show. I always try to make the effort and go at least make a day trip. But we're going to see. It, like with everything else, it's going to highly depend on the plague. So. Alex Steele's first blacksmith started watching before he moved to Montana and now back to UK. He went back to the UK. I did not know that. Okay. So in the field, my homemade single burner forge does not get welding temps. If I wanted to get into forge welding, where would you start? Stone, again, that depends if you're welding high carbon steels, such as for Damascus, or you're actually trying to start welding mild steels. If you're going to weld mild steel, you're really going to need a solid fuel forge. If you need to weld just stuff up for Damascus, you usually can get away with a 2-burner that's reasonably well built and well insulated. Lewis Bottomer, what do you think of a square-faced hammer? Most of the hammers that I have are square-faced. There's a lot of application for them. A lot of times when they're used as a set hammer, so it's a good deal there. So yeah, they're a needed part of any shop. Can you still get flat wicks for lamps in today's market? Yes, I do believe that flat wicks are available. I couldn't say I hadn't bought any in a while. David Solo, got to go before I go. What new words have you invented today? I've been pretty good today. Shag Nasty, what about sand and plaster mix? I put in my soup can forge. Can I tinker with that? Shag, you may get a burn. You may get a burn in it before it cracks and starts to disintegrate. So not going to be a good option. You're probably going to end up wasting your time. So like I said, get a refractory. Rock is out. Nate Brooks, first time getting a live show. Thank you for being here, man. Andrew Sturgis, ever make your way up to New England? I'd love to see you work. Andrew, again, I am wanting to get my butt out of here, but again, plague has got us on lockdown on that end of it. So yeah, and it's been very cool, even with the resurgence here in the videos. I mean, I was already pretty well known, and between doing the Discovery Channel and Forged in Fire, there's a lot of folks that know who I am now, and it's been very cool to travel. Before the plague, I was supposed to go up to Adlai Stein's place in Ohio. May have gone out to California, but again, you got to make a living somewhere in there. And this is kind of the other thing, and I'll put this out there real quick before we start wrapping things up. Is the fact that I've been on TV, but that did not make me a lot of money at all. At the end of the day, I, like many of you, are still just trying to make a living. And I wish I was laughing. There was some like TMZ site that estimated my worth in the millions, and sadly that is not the case. There would be a lot more cocaine and hookers here if that was the case. So yeah, I'd love to travel, but at the end of the day, you still have to make a living. And so, that's why I'm doing these live streams. So yeah. All right, let's get one more in here. On your vid from the modern rivet tool, you notched the center sheet metal. Was that to keep the drill centered? Yes, Chris, good eyes. That's exactly why. It's going to chatter as it kind of walks back and forth. That's one of the reasons I had the speed on the drill up there. But yeah, that's to keep it centered. Maybe a few more. Lucky B is here. Ronald Kirby. What's a good place to get refractory? Mr. Kirby, it depends on where you are because refractory is heavy. It needs to be a local place. Here in Georgia, I have to get mine from a place called Larkin Refractory up in around Atlanta. I think they're in Covington. Think so. But around Atlanta, Larkin Refractory is where I get mine. But again, that's here in Georgia. Okay. Harley Hollingsworth, hello from Bama. Best advice for a 17-year-old getting started. Yep. Harley, buy a book. That's the best advice I can give you. Stay off the forums, stay off YouTube until you read a book. It's the best information you're going to get. Livestock mineral oil. Lucky it's a lighter oil. I don't know. Oil can typically be oil. I don't think it would be a problem. I mean, it's light like canola. But I don't have a good answer for that. I don't know. Did you shorten the fixture length on that power hammer tong maker of yours? No, that original one that I did, I don't think we've made any modifications to it. Blowing hookers, hope they're included in the class price. All right, well, guys, Matt Wythe, is your book also digital? No. We ain't that sophisticated operation. It's all paper here. All the books that go out, I put up, I sign, I send them out myself. So anyway, guys, we're going to wrap it up because we have been here an hour and a half. Good God Almighty, I talk a lot. Anyway, guys, again, thank you all very much. Like I said, I hope everybody's enjoying the new videos. It's been a lot of work, and again, it's been a good month. I'm excited about it. If everything goes really well and we can keep the kind of growth and we can keep our Patreons coming in, then, this may be a permanent thing by March. I think March is kind of going to be the deadline where I have to make a call. I'm still probably going to produce videos, just not going to be on the level of doing it for a living. So we'll see. Anyway, guys, thank you so very much for being here. I hope all of you have a wonderful rest of the week.